Alors, bonsoir tout le monde.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of August 12th. Without any further ado, the City of Dieppe recognizes that the land on which it operates is part of the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. And dear colleagues, let's have the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We have quorum this evening. Everybody is here. There are two council members are joining us remotely this evening. Good evening. And that brings us to conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest? No conflicts this evening? Yes, 11.1, Your Worship. I think I have a conflict. I sent you an email. I think it's 11.1 or 11.1.2. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know, which brings us to I'm trying to go a little too quickly here. We are now at adoption of the agenda. It's been moved. It's been seconded on the question. If there are no questions, all those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying yes. Contrary, nay. We are now in closed session, and we will immediately proceed to number 8, presentations, inquiries, and petitions. 8.1, inquiries by council members of the Kodiak Regional RCMP. Inspector Chantal Farah is here this evening. Good evening. I'm having trouble finding all of my devices here this evening. There we go. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. Just a few items to point out. One case, something that happened on July 31st at 11 p.m. A witness reported that two suspicious men were close to a business on Aldelar-Savoie Boulevard. When the police arrived, they arrested these two persons for possession of stolen goods. They were in possession of a stolen tool that had been reported as being stolen in Sussex the evening before. Through their investigation, the investigators had got a warrant for the search of a storage area where they found a number of stolen tools. The two suspects, one was a 46-year-old man from Moncton, the other one was a 33-year-old man from Riverview. They were released under condition, but we were able to recover and identify a number of the items that had been stolen. So they were turned back to the people they had been stolen from, which is really good. These two individuals will appear in court in October to face these charges. And I'm talking about this because it's not always easy to have sufficient evidence to be able to find the stolen goods and to identify who they belong to. But in this case, there were a number of items that allowed us to identify them associate them to specific files, and that's why we were able to return them to the clients. And this a second point, on the weekend of August 1 to 3rd, the NB Tactical Traffic Enforcement Unit and the members of the local RCMP detachments conducted a traffic enforcement operation on Wheeler Boulevard, a part in Moncton, a part in Dieppe. In just a few days, a number of 149 traffic violations were issued, including 52 for speeding, 11 tickets for speeding between 25 and 50 kilometers over the limit, 5 tickets for speeding over 50, between 50 and 80 kilometers over the limit, which is a lot. As well, their vehicles were towed as well. So that comes along with that ticket, the towing and impound. And then there were 28 tickets for people who weren't wearing their seatbelt. I'm talking about this evening because, as you know, unfortunately, we still have some fatal accidents on our road here in New Brunswick, and more often than not, it's because of the same factors. So there's often speeding, the non-wearing of seatbelt, and the tickets while driving while impaired by drugs or by alcohol. So just a reminder that never take risks. All of these people took a number of risks, and that was just within the space of very few days that we were able to issue these tickets. So these traffic violations. So we have to work with the police and make sure that the community and the roads remain safe. In closing, I just wish that everybody have a great holiday for the day of the Acadiens. So to all the Acadiens, your families, your friends, your cousins, have a great August 15th and make sure you stay safe and responsible. If you have any questions. Thank you. Any questions from council? Thank you. Councillor Berrido. Thank you, Your Worship. Just this morning, I had a complaint about speeding and noise. The two went together. And I smiled because the gentleman who called me said, you should change the name of Acadie Boulevard and you should call it the Speedway, the Dieppe Speedway instead, because just in front of the apartment building at the lights there, in front of the Home Hardware there, they said that's just a takeoff spot for the people to speed. And along Acadie Boulevard, it's true that a lot of people speed. I see it every day. Now, I'm going to ask a question. I'll ask our CAO as well. Instead of having a sign that says what the speed is when you get closer to the Irving, perhaps it should be closer to the light on this side so that people can see the speed they're driving at along this boulevard. Because when you get to that other end, you're already at the lights. So people are going to slow down automatically. Your Worship, we'll see if perhaps if there's a speed limit sign on the marsh. I mean, perhaps people drive by it so often now that they don't see it anymore, but we'll see if there's if we can put another one up further. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody around the table? Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question. Then Councillor Belleville mentioned it. Again, it's a question of excessive noise. We still receive complaints about it. I just wanted to know if you have any update on that. Have you received anything from your higher ups? I know their ears were burning after our last comments. Last time, I just wonder if you've heard any more about it. Well, to try and help with the problem immediately, I did assign our community policing unit to start intervening with the group that was the biggest problem around the Champlain Mall area, where they were going up and down on Paul Street and on Champlain. So that was their circuit there. So we did start some discussions with that group to give them the education, to explain how, I mean, they think it's harmless to get together as a group and drive up and down, but it really does cause problems for the people who live in the area. So far, they've been fairly receptive, and I've heard that they've even moved their group to outside the city because they realize that it causes challenges for others. Now, it doesn't solve the whole problem, I realize that, but because we've initiated discussions with these groups, at least it has made many of them aware. We're continuing to do that sporadically when we see them to try and discourage these get-togethers. And now, in terms of changes to the New Brunswick Act, we brought it up at our table as something that we'd like to see. But, you know, then when it gets to the political level, that's out of my wheelhouse. But we still work within the laws that exist that are determined by the municipality, the province, or the federal government. If there are any adjustments, we adjust accordingly. But right now, our approach is a community one, and we try and go and get around that behavior to change it. Thank you. Thank you. And I sincerely hope that it will become a priority for your superiors to bring it to the provincial table, as we had discussed. But I really appreciate the efforts that you've made and your report this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Of course, for me, in the meetings that are coming up, because all of the different associations that will be meeting in the fall, this issue will be brought up both at the AFMNB as at the UMNB. And we'll see the results it brings, if our politicians want to move on this or not. All right, I don't see any other questions. No other hands are up, which brings us then to the next item, which is a presentation on the greenhouse gas reduction target for 2021 to 2031, for the next 10 years. We have a lot of work to do. Mr. Alexandre Truchon is our in-house expert, and he's going to talk to us about this. Good evening. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. Thank you for giving me the time to explain the context. The same presentation I had given on the inventory of the greenhouse gases that I had given in June, and to propose some some reductions to the targets for 2021 to 2031. You'll remember that the municipalities have an influence on approximately 50% of emissions in Canada through urban design, through the way we encourage development, and the way in which we manage our own activities as a municipality. The basic principles in reducing GHGs are to eliminate the source of the emissions, but if not, to try and reduce or prevent. We also have a role to play in terms of the adaptation. We've seen some climate emergencies across Canada. We've seen some very intense climate events, and the municipalities are often at the front lines during these events. So our role is to be well prepared, but also to try and prevent the intensification of this type of event. And all of this in order to improve the quality of the life of our residents while saving on operating costs. $1 invested today in prevention is worth 4 or 10 in repair costs later on. The Canadian Federation of Municipalities adopted a protocol called Partners for Climate Protection, and Dieppe had joined up starting in 2013. We finished a first cycle in 2023. First of all, we start with an inventory, establish an inventory, and then you have to agree on the objectives, develop a plan, to implement the plan, to follow up on it, and then to go back to the inventory and develop statistics to start the cycle again. We had hired a new, we had engaged, there was a new cohort of municipalities that joined through the Federation in 2023, and now it's the second stage then of setting our targets, our reduction target. So the inventory was developed in 2021. That's the last year in which conversion data were available. We developed a corporate and a community inventory. In other words, by corporate, I mean our municipal activities, our buildings, our municipal fleet, and our different activities such as the waste management and public lighting, street lighting. And at the community level, we're looking at fuel, waste management, energy, and we have public data on the commercial and industrial element. So it's the annual emissions that are counted. For the inventory, then in 2021, we had seen some increases in terms of energy consumption in the buildings, but that was explained partly by the construction and the opening of the Uniplex. But since 2021, there's been some improvements to the buildings. There's been some optimization. So the inventory today is probably a little better. And we've seen some slight increases in the consumption of water as well and of the municipal waste. But in 2021, it was still during the pandemic. So there might have been, some of the statistics might have to be interpreted differently because of that. But what's interesting to note here is the population increase. There was a population increase of 21% during that period from 2013 to 2021. But the GHG per person have gone down by 24% because our population went up more than at that same time the greenhouse gas emissions went down. Here you see the same data, but in a graph. And then we modeled the greenhouse gas emissions. Here you see three different curves. If we don't do anything, if we stop all of our reduction initiatives, we'd see a natural increase here in blue. That's just because of the population increase. In order to maintain the 2021 level, we already have a reduction, but at the same time, we're proposing to try and obtain the 50% reduction target, which is what is agreed to internationally to limit the effects of climate change and to limit it to an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius globally. That's what Canada ratified with the Paris Accord, and that's what a number of municipalities of Canada agreed to do. Of course, I encourage you to agree to that as well. There will be some challenges with that, but the tendency that we've seen between 2013 and 2018, I think we're able to bring this curve downwards. For the community, that's a little more encouraging. We almost had seen no increase at all in the greenhouse gases, except for the solid waste sector. And that's probably explained by the pandemic as well. I talked to my colleague at Echo 360, and they said during the pandemic, there was a lot more waste, a lot more deliveries, a lot more material that was thrown out. So hopefully this will come back to previous levels, and we're working with Echo 360 and the community to bring this trend downwards again. The transportation center, well, take this information with a grain of salt because we were in a mid-pandemic in 2021, but we hope that the greater use of electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, the increase of public transit, we hope that this will be able to maintain that trend. Everything was downwards at the community level, which is encouraging. And when we look at it with the increased population, which is in blue, and so you see that the residents in Dieppe emit less greenhouse gas per person than in the past. That's why we think that a 50% reduction target is possible. With our past is good, and I think we want to maintain this trend to reach these targets. We do have an action plan that will follow, of course. It's being worked on currently. We've had consultations internally with different departments, and there's at least 53 actions that have been identified that are interesting. 21 are already underway, actually. Problems of optimization of different buildings and different projects to improve the energy efficiency, projects to improve public transit and active transportation. and we're going to continue these to see if we can enhance and accelerate them. Amongst these 53 actions, we've identified that half would be led by the environment department. So I don't think I'll be short of work for sure, but others will come under the different departments, buildings, mobility, and planning, for example. So we'll see how that goes forward with these changes in strategy, changes in policy. And so that's why we're presenting a resolution this evening that Council approved, setting a goal to reduce corporate GHG emissions by 50%, corporate and community GHG emissions by 2031. And I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you. Are there any questions by Council? From Council, thank you. Councillor Jeannette, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. This is all good as a target. I think this all looks very positive, but I was wondering if you'd thought of establishing targets to become carbon neutral, if zero net, I don't know if you've thought about that. Thanks. It's not amongst the requirements for the Partners for the Climate, but it is something that if you want Council to adopt something in that sense, other municipalities have already. It's not something we're proposing here this evening because it's a little more in depth, but the net zero objectives were also signed by Canada for 2050. So that's something that could align with this as well. And amongst the actions, a number of them are already underway. This is good. Are we going to be able to see a public document shortly to see which actions are already underway? Well, yes, absolutely. That's part of the program. We want an action plan that will be adopted by Council. That'll be the third stage. We'll come back to you with that. Yeah. Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Leboutier. Well, you just answered my question. What are the controls we're going to have? How are we going to follow up and monitor? So it'll be in the action plan? Yes. Instead of having just an inventory developed every 3 years and to correct our heading that way, we'll identify some key indicators to make sure that we're on the right path, and all of that will be implemented with the in-house committee. Thank you. Great initiative. Thank you. Next person will be Councillor Godbout. No, you have your hand up. Perhaps you might want to lower your hand. Oh, it's here at my end that it wasn't right. So if there are no further questions, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I know a resolution will be following a little later, so we'll come back to it. Questions from the vast members of public that are here this evening, or have we received anything? No, we haven't received anything via the phone or the web. All right, then let's move on to item number 10, the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 8th, 2024. It's been moved by Councillor Thibodeau and seconded by Councillor, sorry about that, Councillor Lantaigne. On the question? No questions. So all those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. Resolution is carried as presented. And item 11, 11.1, a request for a grant from the Marichette Foundation. Councillor, Mr. Melanson. Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. And you'll remember that last December 14th, 2023, we had adopted a bursary fund with the foundation, the Marichette Foundation. And since then, we have been working on finalizing an agreement between the two parties in order to clarify the roles and the procedure for this bursary. So following different discussions, certain elements have been changed compared to what had been presented to council. At the beginning, it was $50,000 that would be given as an annual bursary. But now, according to the discussions, they will be giving out a bursary until the budget has been exhausted. So this information was somewhat different than what had been presented to council originally. So now we just ask that the contributions will be requested by the Marichette Foundation and that the city of Dieppe the contributions will be made to the Dieppe residents until the budget has been exhausted. So discussions will be ongoing with the Marichette, but we'll see how we control the issuance of these bursaries. But if anything changes, we'll come back to you. Thank you. For the reading, Councillor Brideau. Thank you. That Council repeal the resolution entitled Grant Request, Marichette Foundation, adopted on December 14th, 2023, and adopt the following. That Council authorize a yearly contribution to the Marichette Foundation equivalent to the contributions made by the Foundation to Dieppe residents until the $50,000 budget has been exhausted. That Council authorize that this expenditure be defrayed from account number 1-2-20-28-2310, General Operating Budget, Funding and Grants to Organizations. And I so recommend. Thank you, Councillor Brideau. It moves and seconded by Councillor Genet on the question. There are none. All those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. It's carried as presented.
Maintenant au 10.
11.1.2.
Oui, 11.1.2.
We're now at item 11.1.2, contract award for the tourism strategy. Mr. Melanson. So here, I take note that Councillor Godbout is in a conflict of interest, so she will remove herself from the decision on this item. So here, this is a recommendation for Touriscope. It is to develop a tourism strategy. Staff have made this recommendation. This was done by a consulting firm that's an expert in its field. So the cost would be $66,300 plus HST, and would be conditional to a 50% contribution from ACOA. So we're waiting for the official letter confirming their contribution. So again, this will depend on a favorable response from ACOA. So who would like to read the resolution? Mr. Lantin, go ahead, please. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council award the contract for the development of a tourism strategy to Touriscope at the cost of $66,300 plus HST, subject to the city receiving a favorable response to its ACOA funding request, and authorize this expenditure be defrayed from account number 1-2-20-18-2870, General Operating Budget, Tourism. I so move. Moved by Councillor Lantin, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau. On the question. No questions. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. Adopted as presented. Somebody could Councillor Godbout is back. All right, that brings us to item, pardon, 11.2.1. Mr. Lanson. All right, so the emissions, that was the presentation made by my colleague Mr. Chilj, to reduce corporate emissions by 50% by 2031. Who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Jeannet. Thank you, Your Worship. The Council set a goal to reduce corporate GHG emissions by 50% by 2031 with respect to their 2021 reference level, and set a goal to reduce collective GHG emissions by 15% rather, sorry, by 2031 with respect to their 2021 reference level. So I so move. Moved by Councillor Jeannet, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau on the question. Seeing no questions. Oh, could I ask a question, please? Yes, go ahead. So just to come back to my question, the question that I asked earlier. So tonight, this is for the program that we're applying for. That's why we're setting that objective. But if after reflection we want to go ahead with net zero for 2050, for example, or another date, what would be the process? Would this reflection take place later so that we can go get more information, or the activities that we're evaluating are for 2031, so we'd have to do a longer reflection. So if we want to go beyond 50%, there are emissions that we'd have to compensate for, that we wouldn't be able to reduce, but that we'd have to compensate for. So we'd have to look at carbon credits. It's a bit more complex. So we'd need some more in-depth analyses. But if the council wants to mandate us to go and work in that direction, we will comply. I would maybe ask my colleague Marc, do we need a notice of motion for that, or would it have to be a recommendation from staff? Well, we could also do a representation. We'll prepare a presentation talking about what would be required if we need more human resources. So before we make an official commitment, I think we'd have to look at that more. So I've taken note, and we'll come back with a presentation on it. Yeah, and maybe it would be interesting to know what other cities have done. I know that those who have made a commitment to 2050, they have an action plan, and they divide it into 5-year segments, but some are striving for net zero by 2050. So it would be interesting to hear that. All right, I've taken note of that. And we'll come with a summary of what such an initiative would involve. Mr. Thibodeau, or Councillor Thibodeau, please. Thank you, Your Worship. My question is this. It has to do with the second part of the resolution. So the collective GHG emissions. So if I understand collective, that means community? Yes, it's residence activities. So how people use transit, transportation, how much gas is consumed or fuel is consumed in Dieppe. So it's our residence activities. And do we have a plan to incentivize people to go in that direction? Yes, there is we're developing a communications plan. There's a lot of initiatives about raising awareness, prevention plans, incentives to encourage people to change their practices. NB Power also has a plan to reduce energy consumption. So we're kind of adding our efforts to theirs. So NB Power has a plan for net zero as well. So it's a team effort. All right, thank you. Seeing no further question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution carries as presented. All right, now fire, purchase of a pumper. Mr. Melanson. Yes, well, we want to be able to continue to control fires in the city. So this resolution talks about purchasing an E1 model pumper, and 1200 Degrees is the company that won the bid. They met the criteria. So the worth, or that the value of the contract is 1.36 million. And so this resolution involves the purchase of that vehicle. And it takes from 20 to 24 months to get this pumper. So that's why we're presenting the motion this evening, so that we can receive it in time for the fleet. All right, who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Leboutier, please. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council award the tender for the purchase of a pumper, E1 model, for the fire department to 1200 Degrees, pursuant to its proposal dated July 10th, 2024, at the cost of $1,363,994.57 plus HST, and authorize this expenditure be defrayed from account number 3-3-20-12-7902, General Capital Budget, General Equipment Purchase, Fire. I so move. Thank you. All right, who would like to second the resolution? Councillor Brideau. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, somebody has a question? There's a question? Councillor Brideau, go ahead. So this new machine, we have one already that we use. Are we going to keep that one as well? Or is it outdated? Mr. Cormier. Well, the purchase this evening is to replace one of our trucks. Yes. All right, thank you. Any further questions? All right, those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. The resolution carries as presented. Item 11.4, engineering. Tender award, relocation 6 de Gauvin residence at Melanson Road. So this is a recommendation that we're proud to be presenting to you. So as you know, we're in the process of relocating 6 de Gauvin residents, and we did some rezoning work to move this building to Melanson Road. And we've developed an agreement with the province as well to build a second building of 10 units. So there'll be a second one. We launched a bid, and following that bid, we received 8 bids, or 8 replies to our bid, which was a good response. So we recommend to grant the tender for building both units to Bay Construction Management for a cost of $3.9 million roughly, and the amount of $385,000 as a contingency to that contract to cover any unknown items. And then an additional amount of $120,000 to ProDev Consultants for management services. And what's interesting is that the bids came much lower than what we expected. So when we have healthy competition, that leads to good results. So this is our recommendation to you. And so the first part will be to relocate 6 Gauvin, and then the second part will be to do the necessary work in the downtown area and build the second residence. So who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Turgeon-Roy, please. Thank you, Your Worship. So that Council award the tender for the project entitled 2 10-unit buildings, New-Brunswick Housing Corporation, to the lowest bidder, Bay Construction Plus Management, Inc., at the cost of $3,865,832 plus HST, authorize the sum of $385,000 plus HST as a contingency to said contract, authorize an additional amount of $120,000 plus HST to ProDev Consultants, Inc. for management services relating to said project, and further authorize these expenditures be defrayed from account number 3-3-35-58-7674, General Capital Budget, Relocation, 6th Gauzin Residence. I so move, Your Worship. Moved by Councillor Turgeon-Roy, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau on the question. Councillor Brideau, please. Question, Councillor Le Boutier. Thank you, Your Worship. I just have an information question. Are the contingencies automatically given to the contractors? Well, this will be managed by our consultants if it's authorized, yes. So not necessarily, that's the answer. All right, so just for future monitoring, in what we receive, could we see the amount that was required and the amount of the contingency so that we can kind of better have an understanding of the different amounts? All right, I've made note of that. No, I don't know if I understand this, I don't know if I explained that 50% of the cost will be covered by Dieppe and 50% by the province. You told me, but you maybe didn't mention it, so so it's a 50-50 share of the costs there. Yeah, so we've been working on this project for quite some time. All right, any other questions? All right, those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution passes as presented. That brings us to item 11.5.1, tender award purchase for a 3-bus shelter. All right, this is 3 bus shelters and not buses. It's otherwise this amount would have been a good deal if we'd been purchasing 3 buses. Oh, I'm so excited about getting electric buses that I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so this resolution talks about the installation of 3 bus shelters. We recommend that the contract be given to Daytech Limited for roughly $61,000. And this is to grant shelter for users when the weather is less pleasant. All right, who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Lanteng, please. The Council award the tender for the manufacture and purchase of 3 bus shelters for future installation on city territory to Daytech Limited at the cost of $61,710 plus HST, and authorize this expenditure be defrayed from account number 3-3-20-12-7904, General Capital Budget Equipment Purchase Bus. I so move. Moved by Councillor Lanteng, seconded by Councillor Janet on the question. Councillor Le Boutier. Thank you, Your Worship. And again, it's for I'm asking for a bit of information here, not regarding the submission itself or the bid, but on the decision. Now, and this was obviously thought about, but why are we asking to purchase these shelters rather than just purchase them already made? There's a number of businesses that offer. So, Mr. Jérémy, please. Mr. Aubé, please. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Le Boutier. This is a manufacturing project using a specific design. So, and it adheres to certain standards that we have for shelters. And I would just like to add too that the intention is for us to buy the same model in the future. So this is not a shelf-ready project, but it is a good product, and it meets certain standards that we have. Right. Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Thibodeau, please? Thank you, Your Worship. So in the explanation, we're told that it is a vote for the manufacture and provision of 3 shelters. Does that cost include installation as well? No, it's just delivery to the city, and then we'll have a separate contract for the installation at different locations in the city. All right. Any further questions? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution passes unanimously. And that brings us to our next item. Appointments. Bylaw Enforcement Officer. So in 2024, we've created 2 new positions. So Ashley Alaris is the person who began last week. The second person will begin later, but tonight what we want to do is give the authority for her to act on behalf of the municipality. So by resolution, we want to allow these people to act on behalf of the city. So who would like to read that resolution? Councillor Godette. Under the pursuant to the Community Planning Act, the Local Governance Act, and the Police Act, Dieppe Council appoint Ashley Veneris as a bylaw enforcement officer, and that she be authorized, designated, and appointed to act for and on council's behalf in order to properly enforce the municipal bylaws, and that said appointment continues as long as said person remains employed with the municipality or that the appointment is limited or rescinded by council. I so move. Moved by Councillor Godette, seconded by Councillor Lantaigne. On the question. Seeing no questions, those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. The resolution carries as presented, rather. Sorry. 11.7, Planning and Development. The PAC recommendation, Mr. Melanson. So the Dieppe Boulevard subdivision project, the first phase is underway. So there is a recommendation here from the Planning Advisory Committee to accept the tentative plan of the subdivision, which provides for the extension, the location, and the name of Dieppe Boulevard. So this is a PAC recommendation for the Dieppe project. Right, who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Thibodeau, please. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council accept the Planning Advisory Committee's recommendation relating to the acceptance of the Dieppe Boulevard subdivision tentative plan, which provides for the extension, location, and name of Dieppe Boulevard. I so move. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Godette on the question. Seeing no questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. The resolution passes as presented. Item 12, municipal bylaws. There is nothing to present today. Item 13, notice of motions. Mr. Melançon. So this is just to read the notice of motions for motions that will be presented at our September meeting. There are 4 of them, and we don't need a mover or a seconder for these. All right, who would like to read them? Councillor Leboutier, please. Thank you. So I give notice that bylaw C1 2024-1, entitled Bylaw Relating to Traffic and Parking, will be introduced at a future council meeting for first and second reading. Thank you. Let's continue. Second, notice of motion bylaw A-8 2024. I give notice that bylaw A-8 2024, entitled Bylaw Respecting the Pension Plan for the Employees of the City of Dieppe, will be introduced at a future council meeting for first and second reading. Thank you. And please continue on with the next one. Notice of motion policy A-10 2024. So I give notice at policy A-10. Oh, sorry, Councillor. Oh, I think, yeah, I think you started reading the wrong notice of motion. Okay, sorry about that. I was going too fast. So policy A-10. So I give notice at policy A-10 2024 entitled Non-Sufficient Funds will be introduced at a future council meeting for adoption. Thank you. And then the last one, notice of motion, policy EXPD-1 2024. I give notice that policy EXPD-1 2024, entitled Financial Incentives for Real Estate Densification, will be introduced at a future council meeting for adoption. I so move. Oh, we don't need that. These are just notices of motion. So, all right, that brings us to inquiries and announcements by members of council. Let's begin with Councillor Gaudette, please. Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one thing. I just want to wish a great World Acadian Day to everyone here in Dieppe. So have a nice evening. Councillor Leboutier. Thank you, Your Worship. A few things. I'd like to have a report with what's being done with the cycling path that is going to hook up with the Fundy Trail and Shadiac. I think the objective was 2025, but where are things at with that? Well, I know that there was a project that's been submitted to the federal government. We haven't had news. I haven't had any communication either with people from the Regional Service Commission either, so I don't know where it's at. I have a meeting with the administrators from Region 7, so I will ask the question tomorrow. Right, my next question is, in our infrastructure, both inside and outside in the city, do we have defibrillators? The question, I guess, is how many we have? Well, do we at least have one in each of our facilities? Thank you for the question, Councillor Leboutier. The answer is yes. We have a dozen or so defibrillators in the facilities, and we update that list on a regular basis. So, and if people call 911, they'll be directed to the emergency room. Okay, well, it's reassuring. I can tell you that there was a recent incident in Dieppe, and we were able to save a life because there was a defibrillator. So we were able to save the life of the individual because the defibrillator was very close by. And before I end, I too would like to wish a happy Acadian Day, happy August 15th to everyone. All right, Councillor Jeannet. Thank you, Your Worship. I too would like to wish a happy Acadian Day to everyone. And I would like to congratulate the planning team as well. The connection zone employees, the people from Doiron House, people that thank you to all our staff. I think our residents appreciate what's happening, throughout the city. I would also like to invite citizens to come to the Diversity Monday. A number of countries are going to be presented this summer. So Madagascar was presented last week, then it'll be China and Brazil. And so it's Monday from 6 to 8. And there are ethnic associations that prepare a host of dances and other types of activities. So, and it's really something nice to see, to see the diversity that we have here in Dieppe. And there is also activities on Sunday at Doiron House. There's music in the afternoon. So I invite you to go and check that out. And then the last question. So we've named a bylaw enforcement officer. What are the current work hours for the enforcement officer? Is that going to be changed soon, or because they work only during the day? Well, as soon as we get the second person, as soon as they officially start to work, we'll look at making a more flexible schedule. So evenings and weekends as well. So, but we're waiting to have two people to be able to vary the work schedule. So we'll look at that with the manager, and we're not going to be making the schedule public, but the schedule will be flexible. Yes, I think it's needed. So, all right. So enjoy the rest of the summer, everyone. Councillor Brideau, please. Your Worship, I would just like to answer a few questions that were asked to me recently regarding Acadie Street and the poor condition starting from Marché or Market right up until the intersection. And the answer that I was given, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if people are listening to us, I want them to have the answer as well. But that area won't be repaired before the block that's under construction is done. Is that correct? Well, finished, maybe not, but we're waiting for services to be so that work is underway. That's the good news. We want to create additional housing in Dieppe. So we were waiting for that project to begin and for those utilities to be connected to those buildings. And it's also a designated highway by the province as well. So that's another, so we have to talk with the Provincial Department of Transportation. So following that project, then we'll be able to look at repairs. So yes, traffic travels slower in that area, but I mean, it's showing its age. So, but we'll provide an update on what's going to be done. And then, all right, well then I'll just end by saying, Vive l'Acadie. We have a dynamic presence throughout the world. So happy Acadian Day to all the Acadians.
Thibodeau.
Thank you, Councillor Thibodeau. Oops, sorry, your mic. Thank you, Your Worship. I just have two things to bring up this evening. First of all, seeing as we're going to be reviewing the bylaw on parking in my street, in several of our streets. I've been driving along Cousteau Street several times, and there are cars parked on both sides of the street. Several times I've had to stop to allow another car to pass, or vice versa. So I think perhaps parking should only be allowed on one side of that street. It doesn't matter which one, I don't think, but when you start reviewing the parking bylaws, perhaps you could consider that. And have a great Acadian holiday to everybody. Great Acadian Day. Thank you. Thank you. And moving on, Councillor Turgeon-Roy. We'll keep the same order. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I participated in activity a few weeks ago, but we haven't seen each other very often, so I wanted to mention it. On July 27th, there was the inauguration of the monarch butterfly garden close to the aquatic center. And I think it's important to mention it because it was absolutely splendid. It was a great day. It was hot. A number of people were there. It was really nice to see it. And there were some butterflies there as well. So I really wanted to mention that. And I'd like to thank Alexandre Truchot and his whole gang. It was very successful. And as I mentioned, it's really beautiful. And thank you to the Amis de la Nature, the group who participated in the creation of this milkweed garden. So thank you, and I'd really encourage you to go wander around this garden. It's hard to miss it because the Heather Laurie Morse sculpture was unveiled. It's a giant butterfly that you can see from Chartersville Street. It's really beautiful. I really strongly encourage you to go see it. There are some nice things that are going to be happening in terms of the environment and nature here in the community. We really encourage this and we participate. That's what I wanted to mention this evening. I'd like to thank you and have a great August 15th. Thank you. And we'll carry on. Councillor Thibodeau. No, I'm sorry. We've already done Councillor Thibodeau. It's now Councillor Godbout's turn. Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few comments. And we talked about Dieppe Boulevard this evening. It's an important decision on the plan of this future boulevard for citizens, but also for myself as a councillor. For the next steps and context, it's important, of course, to approve the route of the road, but what are the next steps and when will citizens have a better idea of what will be there? Will there be a cycling path, or so what are the different stages and when can we expect them? Could you just give us a quick overview of the project? I don't know if Mr. Landry or Ms. Spencer can answer. Ms. Spencer already has her light on. Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, we issued the first construction contract this year. That'll bring us right up to Pélagie Street. There will be 2 further contracts that will follow. What we're expecting, hoping, are 2 paved multifunctional trails on either side of the boulevard. So there will be the sufficient infrastructure to accommodate the different modes of transport. Does that answer your question? Yes, thank you. It helps to understand visually what to expect over the next year. My second comment, and as Councillor Le Boutillier said, the comment on AEDs, I was present at the activity where the AED, the defibrillator, was used, and I was grateful that the AED was available there, but also we have some extraordinary citizens here in Dieppe, some who don't hesitate to run to help others. There was a nurse, 2 nurses who were present, and they immediately got involved in the process. So even within the community, we're very grateful for our citizens here in Dieppe who don't hesitate to go help their colleagues who are in difficulty. I just wanted to mention that and I wish everybody a great 15th of August. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lantaine. Thank you, Your Worship. And I would like to wish a great August 15th to everybody. Good Acadian holiday. And please, I would invite everybody to decorate your homes, bring out your Acadian flags, because it really brings out the Acadian pride, and take advantage of the great activities that have been organized by the Recreation Department of the city. activities that start at 4 p.m. And we had a great Tintamarre last year. I think it was the one that had the most spectators, the most people participating. So if we could increase those numbers again this year, it would be great. I think we would be able to beat Bacaraquet, to beat Caraquet. We beat them in 2019. So for me, thank you. And have a great CMA World Congress, World Acadian Congress. But of course, we can't forget everything that's taking place within the Francophonie here, within the Acadia. So I wish you a continued success. And as all of my colleagues have said, we're going to have a great August 15th. I will be there. I'll be very happy to participate again. And just a question, though, that was raised by several councillors in private. But I think it's important to talk about drinking and what is allowed on the grounds. You cannot bring alcoholic beverages on the grounds. It's as simple as that. You know, some people might show up with something in their backpack, in their own container, but they're going to get caught because it's going to be monitored very carefully. So if there is there will be drinks that will be sold on the premises, and this will allow people, if they want to take advantage, if they want to drink alcohol, there will be alcohol sold on the premises. But don't get into trouble before you even get onto the grounds. So all of that, have a great celebration. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in all of your colors over the next few days. Thank you.